An organization that works to protect children is issuing a warning to parents. They say kids are often sharing their locations online through social media, and it's putting them at risk. Some people don't even realize how much is actually being shared and what people can do with that information. Jacques Marcoux is the Director of Research and Analytics of the Canadian Centre for Child Protection and joins me now. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on the show.
So Jacques, first off, let's talk a little bit about just how common this is and where you might find that kind of information being shared.
So in terms of how common it is, there's not clear statistics in Canada, but we do know from surveys abroad that it looks like we're closing in on, or well over the majority of teenagers use this. I think over the years it has immersed itself into even family life, where families may use this to just keep tabs on where their children are. But now it's expanded over the past couple of years as we've seen the proliferation of these types of functions within apps, where now kids especially it has become very normal to essentially broadcast your real-time location at all times to an entire network of your friends.
And one thing we should really be clear on is this doesn't just mean where you're clicking that tab and it's location sharing with mom and dad. This can really look like opening a map on Snapchat, Instagram, and it's showing exactly where you are, correct?
That's right. It's real-time location. So just like we may all be familiar with looking at Google Maps, for example, now imagine looking at the same map and seeing icons that represent your entire friend or family network, and you can see their movements in real time. So if someone is driving their vehicle down Pembina Highway, you would actually see that locator sort of progress down that route. So that's really what we're talking about when we say real-time location sharing.
So let's talk about some of these major risks with sharing your location and having that information live in real time. What are things that we should be most concerned about?
So some of the risks are very tangible. So we operate cybertip.ca, and we do see cases where kids are coming in and telling us they've been sextorted or extorted by someone who tricked them into thinking they were a friend. So they added them, and then that person now had access to their real-time location. And then that information gets used by the offender to really ramp up the threats against a child, because they can now tell them that they know where they are, what school they go to, where they hang out, and that puts a lot of pressure on kids. The less tangible ones are more things surrounding fostering, like the importance of fostering a healthy digital behaviors that we have. If we just reflect back on the early days of Facebook, when I think a lot of today parents used to overshare, and when we reflect about how much information we used to put online, we probably in hindsight and with maturity realized that wasn't maybe the best idea. And I think real-time location sharing is one of those things where it's important to stop and take stock, because there are unintended consequences. And some of those things can include, like, imagine a child looking and seeing all their friends clustered at a park or at a house party and you weren't invited. You can imagine the impact that has as a child who's in grade 8, grade 9, finding themselves within a social circle. So there are a lot of mental health harms potentially with these functions.
And I'm sure if we went through all of our friend lists, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or anything, there's probably a lot of people on there that we may have added years ago that we don't necessarily know all that well now these days. How can parents start that conversation with their kids and begin to have this talk?
Like I said, I think parents know these tools exist, but they may not realize just how much exposure they can amount to, especially for a kid. So having those conversations about just taking stock about who are you actually sharing this with? Is it an ex-boyfriend or an ex-girlfriend that you no longer want to share it with, and maybe you forgot to turn it off? Oftentimes, some of the default settings may be to share it, or you may have had the default setting on to share it broadly, and then you've added a new friend and not realize that now you're sharing it with this new person you've just met, but don't know all that well. So taking stock, doing what I would call an audit of what you're currently enabling or allowing in terms of how broadly you're sharing that and with whom, but also just understanding the trade-offs, right? So to an extent, this is like surveillance. It's self-imposed surveillance to an extent. And is that replacing things like having dialogue or check-ins with your parents, picking up the phone and having a conversation about where you're going? So anytime we adopt new technology, it's really crucial that we consider what are the trade-offs with that technology.
Great. Thank you so much. This is an important conversation to start having with our kids. Thank you.
You're welcome.